You're the diplomat because you're there mediating between the two entities. And a lot of times it feels like two separate entities because the needs of the business are not always the needs of the employees, especially from their eyes. And so you're kind of caught in this really tough space, to be honest. It's really uncomfortable.
Welcome back to the Leadership Cafe podcast. I'm so excited about today's episode because I met Michael through a customer experience organization, and we totally align on what we believe leaders should look like in organizations and how important the role of leaders is. But Michael takes a little different spin. He's on a mission to help humanize business through emotional intelligence. Now, before you roll your eyes and go, oh gosh, EI, he really is drawing on decade of experience through his various work with insurance, Walk a Mile CX, as committee chairs on nonprofits, and really deeply involved in customer experience from university programs to nonprofit professional organizations. And I agree with him that customer experience needs to be humanized. And that's really the bottom line of what Michael talks about. So I'm really excited to talk about his deep dive into emotional intelligence and how that impacts an organization, but the responsibility of the leaders to help initiate and lead and carry that through the organization. So, Michael, thank you for being here with us. We're really grateful to have you. Because we're in the cafe, of course, we're going to talk about our mugs. This one, hand-drawn mug from Guatemala for my daughter when she was there. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, mine's not hand-drawn, but it's got all of the Ted Lasso stuff, so.
Love Ted Lasso. Chink. Okay, here's to our combo.
Yeah.
And it's Friday afternoon, so no one needs to know what's in your mug. So tell us a little bit about how you became interested, or maybe your journey of interest in this topic of emotional intelligence and leadership. I'd love to hear kind of how you got here, and then we'll dive into some of the specifics.
Yeah. I think the genesis of my, journey into emotional intelligence within businesses especially, but also on a personal level, honestly started with my work with the Postal Service. And that was a very eye-opening experience, 10 years of my life, and a great place that I learned so much about leadership from both amazing leaders and then also leaders who honestly lacked human-centric skills. And so I saw kind of both sides of it. I saw this opportunity to bring humanity back into culture and to bring humanity back into how we operate as organizations and businesses. And I saw the risks of reducing humanity to numbers in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Or, in the Postal Service's case, it was delivery points versus literal homes of people, existing within this world, right? Or employees, employee ID numbers versus actual employees, right? You know what I mean? Like it was a very stripped down version. So I just saw the need to bring some empathy back in, to bring some human connection and relationships back in, and to reinforce that. And that became kind of my driving force and solidified as my passion. And what I realized was that prior to the Postal Service, I owned photography studios, and photography was my thing. And that's all about human connection. It's capturing that connection. It's capturing those little moments between people and really tapping into their true personalities and everything like that. And so I think part of that bled into my experience with the Postal Service, and it kind of emphasized what was kind of missing. So I think that's kind of what started me on the journey. And then everything after that was really just like, yeah, this is still missing. We're still missing the mark. And this is still needed, and everybody feels like we're empty on some aspect of our relationship with work.
Sure. I think that's so powerful because, as our agency, our kind of thesis, if you will, is that brand and culture and experience have to be aligned. And I through my experience, you and I have talked about, when I got put over a team of 100 who were failing at a Fortune 50 company, and then they said, "Well, while you're at it, fix employee engagement," but they weren't so different. The ways to fix those issues, which we were wildly successful at,
Yeah.
wasn't so different, and it really boiled down to, "I see you, I hear you, I want to work with you to fix it." And when you're talking about health insurance where people just hate you and they're mad and they're frustrated because they don't understand and they don't feel like anybody cares, that certainly could be said of the Postal Service.
Yeah.
But I think it also could be said of a lot of businesses today. And the sad truth is that I've even seen that kind of disengagement in nonprofits that have beautiful missions and meaningful life-changing purpose. And when they get disconnected from the humanity of it, it just becomes a machine. And so, talk to us a little bit about your passion to want to help leaders and where does emotional intelligence come in and where should leaders go from here? How do you get started on this path?
Yeah. I mean, leaders have ownership over culture, and they're the ones setting the tone for an organization or how the actual, like, the people within the systems actually carry out
Yeah.
that mission. Right. And so if they're not connected, bought in, and also very perceptive of the needs of their employees and finding that alignment and being that bridge, then there's going to always be that missing piece. And and I think that usually shows up in a lack of trust, right? You get that disconnect and you're like, I believe in this mission conceptually, but I don't trust that the organization or my leadership are actually bought into it.
Right. Right.
And I think that that is where it starts to degrade. And then the actions of that leader or the actions of the organization can either reinforce that insecurity
Mhm.
or start to demonstrate that, hey, actually, we are bought into this, right? And we're committed through, kind of putting our money where our mouths are, right? And so it all starts there. And it's the crop that we start to grow.
Yeah.
But we have to be very conscious and perceptive and understand that not everybody is showing up at the table with the same background and the same readiness to jump into this and the same trust levels, and that's okay. It just means that there needs to be more investment in that relationship. And so I think that's where I think it's so important to pulse check in a very authentic, non-mechanical way,
Right.
right? You're not just like going through your script of, your employee pulse surveys and things like that. That's valuable information, but it's not the whole picture. I
Right.
don't think that any of that replaces actual conversations, authentic dialogue with your employees. And it can't also be done in one session
Right.
because the same thing is that, like, it's not you check it off every quarter or every year. You're like, yep, I did my one on one. So I'm good. And they gave me this feedback that just kind of, reinforced that, yeah, you're a great boss, organization. I love working here, that kind of stuff. You don't get to the meat of things unless you're consistent
Right.
in demonstrating that you actually care about their emotions, care about the things, their feedback, and then act on their feedback, that demonstration. And I think that's the first lesson that I learned with the Postal Service, which honestly, it started with rubber bands.
Yeah.
So, so, so this is a funny story. Well, maybe not. I don't know. You may have whatever sense of humor, but the thing is that it was this first realization of what leadership really was, and we had a struggling culture at local post office level, and there was distrust between management, frontline management, our employees, our letter carriers, our clerks, things like that, and the thing it was none of the grandstanding, like, "Here, we're gonna do this program," or, "Hey, we're gonna, take your feedback and do nothing with it." Like, it was none of that. Like, the thing that broke through the ice, through that attention, was that somebody would say, hey, I need supplies, right? And so that kind of like sparked something in me. And I was like, if they don't if they feel like they have to ask for the basic supplies
Right.
and that they get frustrated because they don't get those things to do the core functions of their job, I need to be very proactive in providing them these things. And so what I started to do was, yes, immediately jump on the little requests to go grab them a new bag of rubber bands so that they can bundle their mail and get out on the street faster, which is what our expectation was, and do the things that we wanted them to do and carry out their job safely and all those kind of things. But also start when I walk around in the mornings and check in with them and see what how their volumes look and go over my expectations with them, have that dialogue. I'm also looking to see, do they have the right supply level of rubber bands in those little bags that hook onto the ledge of their cases, and start like proactively dropping bags on their ledge for when they return, they have their supplies or pens or, those little things that it's like in your mind, you're thinking big picture, like
Mhm.
operationally, oh, I need to make sure that we have mail up by, 8:30 a.m. Otherwise, they're not going to get onto the street until 9:30. And then you have these delays and all that kind of stuff. You're thinking all those big pictures, but sometimes it comes down to the little picture stuff that builds into that big picture. And it's the little investments that demonstrate that, hey, I see you.
Yeah.
We have a mutual understanding of the expectations and what you're trying to accomplish. And we have that alignment on, we're trying to do this thing, right? We're trying to get mail to America, right? We're trying to do that, but it takes rubber. And so I think that's where like that realization was, it's not the big stuff most of the time. It's the little things. And that's
I
good.
love that. I think it's so powerful because, McKinsey, Gallup, Forbes, all the folks have done research and have shown that you started with leaders are the kind of the purveyors of culture, if you will. It's the supervisors and the managers and the directors that are some of the most powerful people in an organization. And often I've seen that people are like, well, I'm not the boss, so it doesn't matter. And a little accountability share here. I have a book called Human Centric Leadership that's written, it's been through the editor, it needs to release. I've been chickening out. But that middle I mean, often when you're a really great contributor, you get promoted to a supervisor. And now you have your individual contributor work and your supervisor work. But those people are so essential. In fact, research shows 60% more profitable when there's investment in that level of leadership. I just think it's so powerful. And it doesn't have to be blow it up and change everything. It could be a little dial adjustment.
Hmm.
It could be just a little adjustment to make sure you're watching if they have rubber bands, but it makes a difference. And I feel like that's just so powerful because often, and certainly in my experience and in the experience of our clients, it's not a smash the whole radio, it's no, it's just not quite tuned right, and those little changes can make a big difference. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think what people, yeah, of course. I think what people, especially in frontline management or middle management, don't realize is that their job, yes, it's operational. A lot of times it's tactical because you don't feel like you have that connection to the strategy because that's done above your head.
Right.
But what you actually are is you're a translator and diplomat.
Mhm.
So you're a translator of the needs of the business and also the needs of the employees, and you find that middle ground, right? That you could both agree on, and that path forward. And you're the diplomat because you're there mediating between the two entities. And a lot of times it feels like two separate entities
Yes.
because the needs of the business are not always the needs of the employees, especially from their eyes. And so you're kind of caught in this really tough space, to be honest. It's really uncomfortable,
Right.
really uncomfortable. But what it means is that you actually have a lot of power.
Yeah.
especially if you do take those roles very seriously, because being a translator and being a diplomat are critical to the success of the organization. And so you can't undermine that. You can't diminish that impact. And when you start thinking about it that way, then you start seeing that very critical function that you have. And also you become an advocate for both,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And sometimes it switches back and forth depending. Sometimes you need to say, actually, yeah, this is why we're making these decisions as a business. I didn't make these decisions. I'm not emotionally connected to them, but I have to understand why we're making it so that the business can succeed and be here in the next 50 years so that you can continue receiving a paycheck and so we continue providing these products or services, right?
Mm.
So you have to sometimes advocate for the needs of the business. And then
Right.
a lot of times you have to advocate for the needs of the employee or customer and bring those in and say, hey, I understand what you need to succeed for business, but is there a different path here? Because that's going to demolish our employee morale or that's going to demolish our customer experience, right? And here's an alternative, right? And so you're still solution minded. You're providing options, and you push that up the chain. And it's frustrating when you see those things die on the vine, but you're there to do it. And if you weren't there, nothing would happen
Right.
at all.
Right. That's so good. In the Leadership Cafe, we talk a lot about managing up, down, and across the organization because that's the role that we're really trying to talk about. So, talk to us a little bit about how emotional intelligence plays in here. What does a new middle manager need to know about emotional intelligence and why is it important and how does it help you in that spot?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I'll start with middle management is the most stressful kind of role you can have. It has the least reward and the most risk.
Yeah.
And you go through it because it's that stepping stone, right? It's not a place that you want to stay forever.
Right.
Nobody will say that they want to, yeah, my dream is to become a middle manager. That does not happen. That does not happen. But there's a reason for that. It's because you are at that kind of like that critical point between, you know, a lot of like those two kind of conflicting needs. And you're usually not compensated as well as you should be. You're usually have way more responsibility to deliver on things than even those who make more money that have bigger titles than you. You have all of the responsibilities and all of the risk, but none of the title and pay,
Right.
right? And so that's not a great spot. But the reason why emotional intelligence is important is because, first of all, resiliency is really important because you need to invest in yourself as a human to be able to make this work, to be able to get through the hard stuff, to be able to let the stress roll off your back and right size this in your mind and realize, yeah, at the end of the day, this is just work. Yeah, it impacts my whole life, but it's just work. And that might be, something that people are like, yeah, but it's also your living, right? Which it is. It is, right? That's your career path and all that. Very important. But also, it's not usually life and death.
Right.
And so right sizing that is really important because if you have all of this adrenaline and cortisol pulsing through your veins all the time, it will take years off your life in real time. You'll literally be shedding your hair, getting wrinkles. You'll be able to see the transition, right? And so finding ways, whatever that is, to be able to weather that storm is
Yeah.
really important. And also, we know that whenever you have cortisol introduced, then you are less empathetic.
Right.
You are less present for the needs of others. And especially as a manager, you cannot be without empathy because you are the custodian of the needs of those who report to you.
Sure.
And so that's a really important responsibility. And so you have to be very, very disciplined in taking care of yourself first. It's kind of that like, airplanes crashing and, put the mask on yourself before,
Yep.
that it's kind of that kind of thing. And in this case, it really is that because if you are incapable because you're so stressed out, you're burnout, all those things, then you're not doing anybody else any good, right? And also, we want you to be healthy and happy and okay,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So you have to start with that, taking care of yourself, that's, self-reflection, and then you go into that next stage of that empathy, looking out for others' needs, caring for others, things like that. And then you go broader into the social awareness and looking, more so about the community aspects and taking care of others, investing in, in that broader community that you operate within. And you're starting to build out your network, and which also feeds back into your own resiliency because everybody as a human being, even if you're an introvert, you still have social needs,
Yes.
right? So all of these are really important, and we oftentimes separate our personal existence from work existence, and yet we are one. We're humans at the end of the day, regardless of what bucket you're placed in, regardless of like if you're just an employee or a manager or whatever your title is, that's not you. That is the role that you're playing. It's acting in a lot of ways. That is your thing, but that's not you, right? And so you have to protect the you part of it, the human aspect of it, and make those investments in yourself so that you can be successful in your career and in your outside of work life
Yeah.
and maintain that balance. And I'm sure I can give a lot of people like PTSD over like work-life balance kind of stuff, but it really is important, like expanding your world,
Right.
because when things get really horrible within your work, what do you have to lean on? Who can you rely on? Who can you rely on yourself? Can you rely on others? Do you have a bigger world than your company and your role? And I think it's really important to build out that world. So that's where emotional intelligence comes in, and it gives you the tools to be able to go through, to weather all of these storms and come out alive on the other end. And a lot of times better because you're able to learn and adapt and build additional skill sets and invest in yourself in ways that you can't see if you're so bogged down by the stress. You can't see those other opportunities.
Right. Right. Well, and as someone who's been there, done that, and I've been reading a book. Have you heard of Marcus Buckingham? He has a book called Love and Work. And it's so interesting because he talks about this concept of a red thread, which is the things that you love to do. And this idea of he worked for Gallup and Accenture and all kinds of huge research organizations looking at what makes people love their job and others hate it. And one of the studies that he did was with housekeepers at Walt Disney World resorts, which is not a job a lot of people aspire to or could say, I love this job. But he found people who loved their job. For some of them, it was creating little towel characters on the bed, which
Mhm.
actually was a violation of policy. They weren't allowed to touch the things
Don't
that
get me started on policy.
the consumers would be using. But and then for others, it was like one woman said, I like to just lay on the bed and look up at the ceiling and see the perspective of the customer. And then she notices all sorts of things that she needs to do. And it's such an interesting, which also is against the policies, which is a whole different segment. But the point of the study, and it was demonstrated and redone at Johns Hopkins Medical Center, there's so much talk about how disengaged people are or how alone they feel. Or there's even a lot of studies that show, I saw one study that said like more than 60% of employees felt like their boss wouldn't even notice if they weren't there, which just is heartbreaking to me as
Yeah.
a human and as a leader. But the study was showing that even if you have just 5 or 10% of the stuff you do in a week, something that you love, which is creating this moment for a client or being able to organize all the return mail or whatever that thing is that you love, it improved the resiliency and the engagement of employees by more than 60%. It wasn't that I only can do all the things I love because that's a fantasy land. That might be, well,
That's full and substance.
but there are people who have to change the trash and clean the toilets at Walt Disney World, so,
Right. Yeah.
um
Somebody's got to do it.
but I think it's such an interesting concept that in this idea of balance, of course, taking care of yourself, building your own reserve so that you are equipped emotionally, physically, mentally to manage the stress and not just be swallowed by it. But I also think there's such a fascinating piece of, as a leader, being able to observe your staff and find the things, be sure that there's one part of what they do that they love, that lights them up, and I don't know how that really ties with emotional intelligence, but I do feel like as a leader, it's that empathy you're talking about because we know and we see and we care to make sure that's part of it.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is the empathy aspect, right? Because you are perceptive of what your employees are connecting to or what they care about at the end of the day. Why do they show up at work,
Right.
right? Why do they come in every day? They can have other jobs, right?
Yep.
But what connects them to the work that they do? And I think that it's really easy to make assumptions and say you're just here for a paycheck or you're just here because it's convenient or whatever, right? Like you can make all of those assumptions, especially with those who like aren't connected to it or like you're not a like
Right.
you assume that they're not connected, which is also why it's really important to lead with curiosity and
Yeah.
ask them. How's that one-on-one and be like, hey, like, you've been here for 4 years and you have done, a great job, but I just want to better understand who you are and what drove you here. And sometimes they're gonna at first say like, yeah, it just was the thing to do after college, and this was the first thing that I got, and that kind of thing. Like, but you have to. I think sometimes as you drill in, you find those things that keep people here, right? I never expected to work at the Postal Service. I
Right.
never did. There were things that drove me into that, which, was like, family health things and all of that kind of stuff and stability, income, stuff like that. That's what got me in the door. What kept me there was me realizing that I love challenging industries
Mhm.
that maybe aren't the most, like the best known for, human connection and finding ways to build human connection to it because ultimately that's actually the vision of the Postal Service is connecting communities,
Mhm.
right? And so I connected to that. And so if my manager were to really dig in and realize that like my passion was connecting with people and connecting people with people, then that could be a very positive opportunity
Mhm.
to bond over something more than just the tasks that we do.
Sure. Sure.
And so it takes that being open minded, being curious, asking questions, having that dialogue, being authentic, being vulnerable, all of these things, and just taking time and getting space.
Sure.
Because in our everyday, it's so difficult to take the time. We're pressured to get all of these things done, which physically cannot happen in a single 24-hour period, and let alone 8 to 10 hours, however long your schedule is. It's not possible, and yet our expectations are that, oh, we do that. And so then it's very easy to neglect the human aspect and invest the time into building those connections and to actually understanding who your employees are. And I actually fell into that trap, when I first got into management of saying I have to have separation between who I am as a person and my profession, right?
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't like I had to have boundaries of how connected I become with my employees and how much I share and how much I ask them and, really learn them as humans.
Right.
At first, I thought that in the spirit of professionalism, that I had to have really, really strict boundaries that I could not go and have a drink with them or, things like that, right?
Very common thing. Yes.
Yeah.
I have a director written up for going to have drinks for some.
Yeah, and sometimes companies will put that into policy. Um, but what I found is that those are the moments of investment that
Yeah,
you put in with your team to show that you are a human just like they are, regardless of your title, regardless of your pay grade, regardless of your responsibilities and all of those things, that you're both humans that connect on a certain thing and you can learn about each other and understand that you have a lot of similarities. You have this common ground where maybe they couldn't understand that common ground before, and maybe you couldn't understand that common
sure,
ground before.
sure.
And that's really powerful basis to build a relationship off of.
It's so good. I love that whole conversation. I could talk about it forever. I know we're kind of wrapping up on time, but I know that you just recently released a new program to help people with this very thing. I'd love to hear you talk about it. I can't. What was the name of it? EI
Yeah, empowered.
Empowered. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that and what people could learn from that.
Yeah. So Sandra Thompson and I decided to go on this ambitious mission of making emotional intelligence a hard skill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a human centric skill and it has a lot of power, but trying to find ways of making it just slightly less perceptually fluffy,
Yeah.
right? And showing how you can actually leverage emotional intelligence in both a practical way and also build these skill sets up that will pay dividends in the future, right? And so this is a practicum. We chose practicum very intentionally because we hated courses, which are usually you watch something, you digest material, and that's kind of the end of it. You take some quizzes and you get a certification, things like that. It's not a course. It's not just a course. There's course material, but it's not just a course. But practicum was chosen because it's practical. You're actually exercising the skills in a simulated real world environment where you are working with a cohort of peers, random people that we're going to choose those people who are within that cohort and you're going to work with them and practice these skill sets and really refine these skills in emotional intelligence in the context of how you communicate so that you can become an unshakable communicator and a more effective communicator. And we've also partnered with a company called Six, and they have been able to infer the release of oxytocin and dopamine release through your smartwatch. And so we provide this as an option, not a requirement, but an option that you can choose to utilize that to gauge your biological reaction to your communication with others to see if these skills that you're building, if you're landing and you're connecting with those who you're communicating with, and that you're present and receiving in that dynamic as well. And so that you have this tangible way of measuring the effectiveness of your communication and to reinforce what we're teaching you and to reinforce the very hand-picked exercises that we
Mhm.
have you doing through this experience so that you actually become a more unshakable communicator, better communicator, and that you can continue to reinforce those skill sets afterwards. And I think that's the part that Sandra and I both aligned on was we've all taken courses that you digest the material, it's memorization, you regurgitate it on the quiz, you get through that, all that kind of stuff. At best, you retain 15-20% of it afterwards. And it's even harder to actually deploy that within your everyday life. And we're like, reality doesn't have to be that. And so we're redefining, we're finding a different approach to education through this as well, and saying we want to take this human centric skill and teach you how to actually deploy it within the context of your everyday life and your career and help you level up based on being a more effective communicator in
So
practice and have the tools to continue that learning and reinforce that learning over time.
well, having been a vice president at a Fortune 50 company, I can tell you that communication skill cannot be underscored enough.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are experts at niche tasks and functions, But if you can't subsequently communicate in a way that engages and connects people, it doesn't matter how good you are at that thing. Your progression in the organization will be stopped. And I can
It's always
wholeheartedly agree that that is the thing. I saw a physician who's posted on LinkedIn, and she talked about how she had almost become the doctor she swore she'd never been. It was through kind of this just fatigue and getting a little bit jaded and mistrust and all of that. And the phrase that she said in her post that was just mic drop to me was that we don't wake up dismissive, we erode to that. And I feel like that is such a powerful phrase for managers who this employee isn't doing what they want or didn't do it right or didn't.
Yeah.
We don't wake up dismissive. We erode to that by not entering with empathy, with that curiosity that you talked about. There's so much we could chat about, and I would love to go in deeper, but we're running out of time. Where can people find you? We'll put it all in the show notes, but if they're interested in this EI Empowered, where
Yeah.
might we look to get more skill?
Yeah, eiempowered.com is where we got our landing page. Sign up to our wait list. We're planning on launching our first cohort right after the new year, actually right after MLK Junior Day. And so people can check us out there. Of course, connect with me on LinkedIn, and you'll kind of see the threads of my passions through all my posts there.
Yeah.
And those are great places to start.
Oh,
And check out Sandra Thompson as well,
okay.
my
Great.
partner in crime.
We'll put her bio in the links as well, just because I love what you're doing. I think it's so important. I think it's so necessary, and I'm all about helping new and emerging leaders to become more human centric. We saw data in the last year where those soft skills are actually showing revenue enhancement for companies. So I believe that that fluffy skill that you mentioned will become something that will really make you stand out. And honestly, at the end of the day, in the age of AI, hiring and everything else, the way you communicate is going to be the thing that will set you apart.
100%.
Michael, I
We're banking
appreciate
on it.
you here so much. You're welcome to drop by the Leadership Cafe anytime. We're just set up with the passion and the heart to want to empower young and new leaders and small teams to lead their people better, to take care of themselves, as you said, resiliency, so that we can be a better leader and have more impact in the world. And so we're grateful for you adding to the conversation. Cheers. Thanks for being here. Here's Ted Lasso. Yes, but stoked about that.
Can't wait. Cannot
I
wait.
can't either. I mean, talk about I follow a page on one of the socials that's all just Ted Lasso quote,
Right. Yeah.
clips, memes. I'm just like, I'm obsessed. So,
Be a goldfish.
yes. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.